I'm with Fred Dixon, who has been a great help being the source of technical advice and assistance in establishing Just Ottawa. And he's here today to talk about to provide computer advice. And we thought for the topic today, we'd look at how you decide when your current computer needs to be replaced or upgraded. Fred, what are some of the symptoms you should be looking for in terms of taking that kind of a decision?
So I've actually helped a lot of your friends out, Brian. So over the years, I've had a good cross-section of being called in by friends and asked, the computer doesn't work or something's wrong. And more often than not, most of the times they have a computer that's 5 or 6 years old and it doesn't boot, or they're trying to do something with it and the computer's not working. And it always looks at it and say, I think, does this mean, is it better to replace the computer or is it better to upgrade? So what I look at is, what is the person trying to do with the computer? So it's either a situation where it's not working, or more often than not, they're trying to do something and the computer is typically getting slow. Or they would say it's getting slower and slower as the years go by. And the reason for that is, even when you buy your computer, at the time it was probably pretty quick, but Microsoft has been upgrading it with patches over the years, and each one of those slowed the computer down a bit.
Sure.
And many times people would have bought a computer without any spyware. This is like 3 or maybe 5 years ago. But then over the years they would install Norton antivirus. And that takes up a lot of memory. So first thing I would do is I'd look at the computer and say, how much memory does it have? So if you go to the Start menu and you right-click on my computer, it'll tell you how much memory it has. And I've seen computers with as low as like 96 meg of memory. Most often than not, someone will have like 128 meg of memory, and that's just enough to boot the operating system. Yeah. And that's about it. And then if you start to run Windows Explorer or Microsoft Word, it gets slower and slower. If the case where the computer is not booting, like it has problems, it's a pretty good indication that the computer is on its last legs. So if the question is, should you upgrade or replace it? If someone calls me in and they're like, their computer's not working, my approach is, let's get it working, or let's figure out how to get the data off, and then we're going to get them over to a new computer. Mm-hmm. If the computer is working fine but it's just slow, then I usually ask them, well, what is it you're doing with the computer? I look at how much software they've installed, and I look at, have their needs changed? So for example, some people just surf the web, right? They use it for email on the web. Even if you have an old computer, as long as it still works, that's fine. Mm-hmm. Your bottleneck is not usually going to be the computer, unless you have very low memory. I have a friend who only had 128 meg of memory, and she was trying to run iTunes. And iTunes came up, but it took like 10 minutes to come up. Yeah. So I doubled the amount of memory, and it was much faster. So I'd ask, what is it you're trying to do with it? Yeah,
because certainly if you're looking at that decision, should I upgrade or replace the computer? There are pros and cons on both. Certainly, upgrading it is a simpler thing to do. Right?
In some ways it is. It depends on what you want to upgrade as well, or need to upgrade. If the computer is just running slow, the easiest thing that you can do is add more memory. Mm-hmm. So sometimes the older computers, the memory is harder to find, but if your computer is like 3 or 4 years old, you can find the memory for it pretty easily. The memory architectures change every 2 or 3 years. That's because the computers are getting faster and faster, usually every 18 months, so the memory has to catch up. If you just have to upgrade your memory, you can many times take your computer in and say, I just want more memory. And they'll open the computer up, they'll stick the memory in there for you, and you're done. Yeah. It's something that you can do yourself if you read about it on the web. It doesn't take very long to do. That's the biggest thing. The next thing that happens is the hard disk gets full. And I've seen this less over the years because people now they buy the computers even today with huge hard disks. Even years ago, 100 megabyte or 128 gig hard disk was still quite a lot of storage. So if you find yourself running out of hard disk space, you can upgrade as well by adding a second hard disk. That's a little more effort because you have to buy a hard disk, open the computer up, and unlike the memory where you just kind of push it in, there's a few more cables to connect up with a hard disk. If somebody is running out of disk space, a new hard disk is like $120. It's not much. But if someone's running out of memory and running out of disk space, and their computer is slow, and they want to do more than just surfing the web or reading email, now you're starting to talk about you need a bit more with the computer.
Mm-hmm.
And a good example I've seen a lot is people have bought digital cameras, and they're running Photoshop Elements.
Yeah.
So they're using up lots of disk space. It takes a lot of CPU to manipulate the photographs, and they have to load into memory, so it takes memory as well. Recently I had some friends who had an old computer that was fine for email, was fine for the web, but one of the spouses was doing Photoshop Elements and really enjoyed it, was spending hours doing it, and the computer was slow. So, on one hand the computer still worked, but on the other hand what they wanted to do with it had changed over the years. So I said to them, look, if you're willing to spend, the ballpark seems to be about $1,000, $800 to $1,000. If you spend $800 to $1,000, you are going to get a very fast desktop machine that will last you for the next 5 years. And it will do photo editing and Photoshop Elements really easily.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had other people who I'd suggest, you really need to upgrade your computer, and they don't want to. Like, they want to have the old computer, and like, can I put some more memory in it? And I'm like, yeah, you can, There was one person who the memory was so old I couldn't get it anymore at the computer stores. Or to get it, it would have been a special order of about $250. Well, if you're going to spend $250 on memory, just, a new computer today, like from Dell, you can get $400, right? That's memory, hard disk, power supply, motherboard, case, everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Keyboard and mouse.
But what strikes me, Fred, is that if you can upgrade the machine, if you can put more memory in it, if you can take it in to get a second hard disk or something, I mean that's fairly straightforward. But actually replacing the machine, getting all the programs and all the data over and having it work on a new computer, that could be a major challenge. I know you've told me that it could be a major challenge. Maybe this is something that we should talk about in more detail in a subsequent video clip.
Yeah, like once you get to the point where you need to replace the computer, there's a couple things you need to think about ahead of time. We can talk about that.
Yeah, because what I remember is you saying that David and Cecile Horley, it was a 6-hour operation.
Yes.
To switch from their old computer to their new computer.
Yes.
So maybe we should talk about that in a subsequent video.
Yeah.
Thanks, Fred, very much.
My pleasure.